Hello YouTube, Motovlogs here, and I would like to do a quick review slash question and answer on my 2003 Honda Shadow 750 Spirit. Now, a couple people have asked me if this would be a good bike for a more experienced or even a beginner rider, and I have to say it's really all up to you. I started on a 250 Ninja, so yeah, it's a bit of a step up in weight, size, power. But you know what? The little 250 Ninja was way faster. So whoever said, "Oh, you don't need that kind of power," just relax. You've never tried it. Now, the one thing I do have to say about the 750 is if you're going to be thinking about riding a cruiser for any length of time, like if you've ever had experience on a bigger bike, the 750 just won't quite feel right to you. Now, for me, it feels great coming from a 250. This is my second bike. For me, it was a choice between a Harley Sportster, which I don't know, wasn't really my thing with the mid controls. I know I could have put forwards on, but it just didn't feel quite right to me. And this just fit like a glove. I'm a taller guy, about just right around the 6 foot mark, like 5'11 and a half, so I'm going to say 6 feet, just to be average. And I'm about 200 pounds. So I am right split in the middle of the road for an adult male. So really, this bike is, if it fits me, it'll fit right around anybody my size, and well, weight would be fine, but my size. I have longer legs, so the mid controls just were not useful for me. I couldn't do it. I'd feel too cramped up, and that was the only reason I sold my 250 Ninja, because I just could not be on it for any length of time. Now, the title of this video is, do I like my Shadow 750? My answer to that is, what do you see right in front of you? My Shadow 750. Well, obviously I like it. I bought it. I had a couple options. I didn't just go out and tell someone buy me a bike. No, I shopped. I went out for it. I looked. I compared all different price ranges for what I wanted. I'm not an older guy. I can't afford to just be putting money away on a bike. I can't afford it. I'm going to school. I needed something affordable yet satisfactory. Something that I could have fun with in my price point. And an old, almost worn out Sportster in my price point, that would have sucked. I would have had been looking for a new bike soon. I would have got bored of the small length and high height. They have a weird center of gravity to me. I would have got bored of the power because yeah, I know it's a bigger motor than a 750 and an 883, but the bike's heavier. It it loses that power. It doesn't have the compression that the 750 Japanese bikes do, and that's what it comes down to. It's not the size of the engine; it's how the engine performs. I've test driven a million bikes, just through family members. I've sat. Sorry, I haven't test drove millions, but I've sat on millions. I know how they feel. I go to the spring bike show every year, sit on everything available. I've tried the Yamaha Bolt. I've tried them all. So if that's what people are thinking, like, oh, you don't know the difference, I've tried them. Keep to the opinion you will, but this is the bike I chose. This is the bike I like. It fit my style perfectly. What I wanted was something that looked kind of like a Harley Street Bob, because that's my favorite bike, the Dyna Street Bob. It's kind of their middle of the road, right at the beginning of their Dyna lineup for price point. It's not quite at the soft tail, but it's more than a Sportster. It's a full size Harley. It's just not as expensive as some of their bigger bikes, and it looks sweet. If you've ever watched the show Sons of Anarchy, that's what they all ride. They all ride Dynas. Dynas are a perfect street slash touring bike. By touring, I mean like long highway rides where you need two seats, a radio CB, and all that crap. I'm talking about like little rides, maybe some road trips, nothing huge. This is the bike I chose, and that's for a number of reasons. Mainly because I love the way it looked. Now this is not what a stock Honda looks like. Like, for one, probably shouldn't be taking these off, but there's my grips. Do a little Google search when you get a chance. Kuriokin ISO flame grips. These are not cheap. Whoever had this before me spent a lot of time and money putting little accessories into this bike. Like everything up here is Kuriokin, and these hand grips, I'll show them to you in a minute when I want to move the camera. Sorry, not the hand grips. The brake and clutch lever are Kuriokin skull levers, so they look like a bone. All stainless steel and chrome, and it is absolutely gorgeous. All the pegs are Kuriok and ISOs. Like, they're not cheap. Whoever had this put a lot of money into this bike, and I got it for a hell of a deal. So whoever says I should have bought the Sportster, you go buy it, because I'm not. Now, there are a few things, just a few, that I'm not really too fond of on this bike. One, gas range. Now, it's not an overly powerful bike for big displacement standards. Like, it has a ton of power. It has an excess of power. But I'm talking about displacement, like how much fuel it burns compared to air. It's a high compression engine. That's where the power comes from. But the fuel range is not perfect. It has a way bigger size tank than a Sportster, but honestly, $10, so just over 10 liters, or I don't know what that is in gallons. Figure it out. It's not a big tank. It's just over 10 liters. Like, it's a sub $10 tank to fill, and that's surprising because that it doesn't have much more than a peanut tank for fuel ways. Like, it should hold more, but it doesn't. Now, that's the one gripe I have about this mainly. Everything else is me being nitpicky, but that's a common complaint with this bike. It just doesn't have the fuel range. So if you're thinking about taking this on big, long highway trips, just keep in mind that you might want to know where the fuel stops are. It has a huge reserve, though. That's one thing I am going to say. It has a massive reserve. The reserve is the size of most regular cars. So don't be afraid. You'll feel it sputter way longer than way earlier than you thought it should. If you feel it sputter, flick that little fuel petcock, and you're going for way longer. The reserve is massive. When you look in the tank when you think it's empty, like when it dies, you look into the tank, you think you still have half. So that's my one gripe. It's a weird setup. Two, this is the one thing that it's just me. I love a low revving thumping cruiser. And this is absolutely perfect around the city or at regular road speeds, so 80 kilometers or 55 miles an hour. This is absolutely perfect. It sounds amazing. It has the perfect revs for that. But when you get on a freeway or anything around the 100 kilometers an hour plus, so about your 70-mile mark, that's where it gets a bit rough. Not that it doesn't run nice, it runs beautifully, but the revs are just a little high. But here's what I'm going to do. I've told you what I like about this bike. I've told you what I don't like about this bike. I'm going to start it up for you, and I'm going to let you hear the way it sounds. This is a set of Cobra Boulevard drag pipes, and holy crap, this just makes the bike. So let's choke it. Let it run for a minute to get the heat on. How does that sound? Absolutely gorgeous. This is by far my favorite part of the bike. The way it sounds, the way it feels. It performs beautifully. Now, it has been dyno tuned, so it has a dyno jet system, and whoever put it in has the slip. It has a perfect air-fuel ratio. But because of that, you may think it runs lean if you come from a stock Honda. The only downside is when you're decelerating, you might hear the odd little pop or backfire. That's just because of the high compression of this engine. Okay, yeah, it wasn't warm enough for that yet. Now, if you are looking to buy one of these bikes, there are a few things I definitely suggest. One, if you're buying it stock, like the person who I highly doubt you will, but the person who you're buying it off of hasn't done anything to this bike, replace the seat. The seat on this bike stock is absolutely dreadful in my opinion. But I'm the kind of person who likes to accessorize. What I opted for when I got this was a West Eagle. It's cheap. I'm just going to grab a socket. was a West Eagle solo seat. So if you know anything about the company West Eagle, they're not very expensive. They're readily available online, and their stuff is great. It's all, I've never had anything bad to say about my seat. Extremely comfortable. And two, one thing you're definitely going to want to replace is, if you're like me and want something that doesn't sound overly Japanese and choked, I don't mean that in a derogative way, I'm just saying the bike sounds absolutely god-awful stock, you're going to want to replace the air filter, or the breather, if you're a Harley guy, and you're going to want to replace the pipes. Now there's an old quote, a drunk old guy came up to me and said when I first bought this bike, was at a campground, and he just came up to me and wanted to talk about it. The guy was absolutely plastered. But he said that a stock Honda sounds like a fart into a wet sock. Now, take that the way you will, but that's what he came up and said to me. And I have to agree with him, because it's hilarious. Anyway, that's the West Eagle solo seat. Nice little badge right there. They're nice seats. They're comfortable. They're assembled fairly well. They're not stapled. They're riveted, so you don't have to worry about anything giving way. It's well supported up here. The seat's had a lot of miles, and I haven't had a single issue with it. Everything's strong. It's a beautiful seat. Definitely worth the investment. And it's a nice little bobber style solo seat, so it gives your bike that custom look you've always wanted.